Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Evil Live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, the Evil Tyrone, and I've got no one other than Molly Henry in the building tonight. How you feeling, Molly? How you feeling tonight?
I am doing great. How are you tonight?
Listen, it's Tuesday, had a little fun earlier, smoked a little bit after work, so I'm
Nice.
ready for this interview. I'm ready. I'm ready. It's going to be a fun time. I first interacted with you on the Bloody Disgusting, podcast with the
Mhm.
Queen, Xena, Queer Demon, the gang, had a lot of fun. So I was like, I gotta get you on, gotta get you on, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm definitely excited, especially after the conversation we had on that podcast. That was definitely a fun time.
Yes. And it's always fun, talking to a fellow writer. You're a writer, you're a Rotten Tomatoes approved critic, you're the mother of uterus horror on the Certified Forgotten, podcast. So you got a lot of things going on, and a lot more. Like how does it feel, being so active in the horror community?
I mean, it's funny because I feel simultaneously really active and not active at all. And maybe that's just like a thing that a lot of writers feel, but I or maybe it's the Capricorn in me if we're gonna go
Yeah.
by zodiac signs or something. But I mean I love everything that I do. I love my years horror column and I love my editors at Certified Forgotten. They're amazing. Um, and I love writing the reviews from my own website. And but I mean, I'm also one person, so I constantly am feeling like I'm not keeping up with everything. Like I still
Yeah.
haven't seen Lisa Frankenstein, and a lot of people have.
Oh,
So
me neither. I heard it was amazing. I heard it
yeah,
was
I'm
amazing.
sure I'm gonna love it. I just but yeah, so it's I mean it's great. I and there's like so many things that I'm doing and more that I want to be doing. Um, and since I have ADHD, I also get overwhelmed by all of those options. So
Listen,
it's definitely like straddling that line. I love it, but I constantly feel like there's more that I could be doing at the same time.
I feel like that is just it's a big chunk of like being a content creator because I feel the same way. Like people be like, "Oh, you're talking to all these people," but I'm like, I should be doing more. I should be doing this, be doing that. And then when I'm not consistent, I'm like, "Oh my God," like I should be I'm overthinking, So I
Yeah.
feel like it's a it's a thing a lot of us can relate to, but as long as you're putting your art out there and putting your all into it when you can, I think it's a good thing, so keep it up.
And it's a great community to be a part of too. Like I feel like obviously there are pockets of bad in any type of
Yes.
fandom or any whatever however you want to refer to it. Um, but for the most part, my experience with people within horror has been so amazing. And most people are so like welcoming and kind. Like I said, there are always outliers, but for the most part, I think that it's one of the less scary fandoms or communities, which is kind of ironic since it's horror.
Yeah.
But it's I like there's so many great people. Like obviously like meeting you on the podcast previously and stuff, and like that whole group of people, and just on virtually every form of social media, and especially like the rare opportunities where you get to meet some of these people in person. Everyone is just
Yes.
so nice and awesome, and it's a great group to be a part of. Oh.
Yes, it
Sorry, first
is.
animal visitor has
No,
arrived.
listen, we this is a pet friendly space. We love the animals, we love the cameos. We love the animal cameos.
It's
We
he'll probably be the only one you actually see. You might hear the others, but
Oh, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. It's just cuteness overload on the screen. Cuteness overload. We got Jaleesa Taylor in the buildings. Thank you for stopping by, Jaleesa, Miss Taylor, the queen. All right. So now uterus horror, I wanted to talk about that. Like, how did you come up with that? And I love the name, so how did you come up with combining uterus and horror?
yeah, it's kind of like it's so stupid how it actually came like the first inkling of this, it was from like a meme on on that, not where the name came from, but this was, I think it was back at the very beginning of the pandemic, maybe even a little bit before. I don't know if you remember on Twitter, people were doing the meme where it was like a cartoon of a school cafeteria, and they would group different things at each table, and you would have to pick which table would be the one you would sit at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was one that did that where the three movies that they had on one table were Carrie, Ginger Snaps, and Jennifer's Body. And not only was I like, that's my table, it kind of made me realize this subgenre of horror that people don't really talk about as much, and it didn't really have a name or anything like that. I have a longer definition of uterus horror on my website, but the basic way that I describe it is that they are coming of age stories, specifically coming of age stories for women, that use horror as a way to act as a metaphor, or like really highlight some of the struggles that young women go through when they're going through puberty or experiencing first love, things like that. I usually cite Carrie as kind of being the even though there are other films before it that could fit into this subgenre, I think Carrie is really the first one to really highlight this type of film. And then Ginger Snaps was, I think, what brought about the modern resurgence of it. Because like you see films here and there, but it wasn't really until Ginger Snaps came out that we started seeing a lot more of these films.
Yeah.
And now they're like, if I feel like every year, like last year, there were at least 2 films that I saw that as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, I can't wait to write about those for the column. So and it's constantly growing. And something that I also like to always point out, so within that definition, so the name uterus horror was something that I'm really awful at naming things. I'm going to be upfront with that right now. I can write all day. I'm horrible at coming up with names for things. And the name uterus horror was one that popped in my head early on and kind of stuck. And when I pitched it to an editor, when I was trying to find a home for uterus horror, they were totally on board with that. And the main reason I chose that was to piss men off. Like, because I really wanted to highlight that this is the subgenre of horror that is very much for women. Men already get their own coming of age stories in horror and outside of horror, and you don't see as many for women. But I also really like to highlight that even though it's called uterus horror, you don't have to have a uterus to experience uterus horror. One of the films that I've written about is Sleepaway Camp, which, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen that one yet, but it's an old movie. But that one is depending on the lens that you look at it through, it could be like interpreted as a trans story, but the main character is still a woman, identifies as a woman, so that fits into the uterus horror subgenre. So I always like to point that out too. It's not necessarily the anatomy you have, it's more how you identify. Because I understand the name uterus horror problems. For some people, it might give them pause.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when I first pitched this, the whole idea of the column, it originally was pitched as a podcast idea. No, sorry, it went through a really long process. It was originally not pissed. I'm having issues speaking now. It was originally pitched as a book idea that then became a podcast idea that then became a monthly column. And when it originally started, it was actually on Fangoria's website. So my first 2 articles were there. That was the one I did for Carrie, and then one I did for Ginger Snaps with an interview with Karen Walton, who was the screenwriter for Ginger Snaps. And Karen Walton's amazing. Love her. And then after that, like that was around the time that Fangoria was going through some transition. So then when I was looking for a new home for it, Certified Forgotten immediately were one of the first people that reached out to me. And honestly, I'm so like, I loved working with Fangoria, but like, I think since it's a smaller team, I get a lot more, I I don't know the best way to word this, because it's not like, it's more encouragement, and more if there's something that I need to change, or if there's something that like with the way that I'm writing or something, like they're really good at providing feedback. It's actually usually Christine Makepeace is the editor that usually specifically edits my pieces, rather than one of the Matts who are the guys that run it. But they're such a great team, and they're so encouraging, and they always support me, whether it be with the column or things that I do outside of Certified Forgotten as well, which they're great. I love them, and it's been such a wonderful home for the column.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. It's expansion. It's expansion.
Yeah.
You're with all these, all these different outlets, and getting your ideas out, and more ideas. I feel like just the more perspectives out there, the
Mhm.
better, and more rounded we as a society, are going to be. Like you were talking about, like uterus horror, and how it might cause some people pause and things like that. And it's like, I don't know. It's just for me, when you throw a different perspective in there, I'm hooked even more. I have more questions, even watching something like which isn't horror, but uh Big Red, the Pixar movie or whatever. And I feel like that would fall into, that a
I
uterus,
I actually
category.
did write about Turning Red
Oh,
for
yeah,
for the column.
yeah.
As soon as it came out, I every once in a while I'm able to convince them to let me write about something that isn't explicitly horror, and that was the first one. But I was like, no,
Yes.
it's basically the same story as Ginger Snaps. It's just a Disney cartoon. Let me write about it.
Yes, I could totally see that. I could now. Wow, I didn't even think about that, but now it makes sense. It makes sense, especially with the whole turning and stuff like that. Like it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's during those formative years, and when it's, I mean, because it essentially in that movie they were basically saying her, when she got her first period, was basically when she started turning into a red panda.
Oh
Which
yeah.
honestly, if I could turn into a red panda, especially a giant one like that, I would be so happy. I That's honestly one of the best transformation things, because a lot of times the transformations aren't fun. they're
Yeah.
they're very tumultuous, but not in that one. It's good time. I love that movie. They did
Yeah.
a great job with that one.
Yeah, they did. Oh, it was so fun and very nostalgic as well.
Mhm.
Like I felt like, it was it was our people, our generation, the
Yeah.
millennials that were had their hand in that pot, over there. So it's definitely one of them. Definitely one of them. My next question for you would be, what was your introduction into the horror genre? Like how did you get into the spooky, your horror origin story?
Yeah. So my story starts when I was 4 years old. I have an older sister who's 9 years older than me, so she would have been about 13 at the time. And she was babysitting me with one of her friends. And I honestly, I've never asked her about this. I'm assuming the friend brought this over because I don't think my parents would have let her watch it, but they decided it would be a good idea to watch A Nightmare on Elm Street with me,
Ooh,
at the age of 4. And we were in one of the kind of house, I don't know if there's an actual name for it, where from the front it looks like a single story, but then on the back it goes down and there's like a lower basement story that opens out into the backyard. And so we were in the downstairs part, and my parents came home early. And instead of turning the movie off to hide the evidence, my sister and my friend ran upstairs to intercept my parents and left me downstairs alone in the basement with Freddy Krueger. Uh, so that was a very traumatizing moment in my life, but it also weirdly made me really obsessed with horror. Like Freddy Krueger to this day is one of my favorite horror villains. Um, and it's funny because almost all of my early film memories are horror, because I can
okay.
remember specifically the first time I saw that. I also remember the second horror film I ever saw was the 80s movie House. Not the Japanese one, the like haunted house war veteran one.
Yes.
And that one I watched at a family get together at my grandparents' house on their like little TV in the bedroom. It was on TV or something. And again, I was probably 4 or 5 when I saw that too. So it's just these films left such an impression on me. And I'm sure my parents hate that they did, because I also suffered from like horrific nightmares most of my childhood. Probably partly because I really liked watching horror, but they also didn't really try to censor what I watched that much. Like to an extent they did. They tried to keep the super violent stuff, but like I was the kid that going to like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster back in the day, like going through the horror, just looking for the weirdest covers I could find and renting those movies. Like I've basically been watching rated R films since I was like 4, and my parents were like, eh. Like, it was more why it was rated R than the rating itself that was a concern for them. But yeah, so I think that if they could go back and change things, my parents might have tried to get my sister to not have me watch that. But they also have been supportive, so it's it ended up being a good thing in the long run, because it's been several decades now that I have been in love with horror, and it all started just with that one chance when my parents weren't home and my sister was making poor decisions on my behalf.
Listen, that's how some of the greatest things start, like watching Nightmare on Elm Street at 4 is very wild, especially the first one, because
Yes.
like, like later on, things got a little goofier, Freddy got a little bit more
Yeah.
silly, but in that first one, oh my God, that was pretty hardcore. But I think like siblings is one thing, but you speaking about like parents picking and choosing, certain things. And I feel like, it's every parent like says, all right, what is my kid allowed to watch? What type of themes aren't they allowed to watch? So I think it deserves a balance. Like everybody,
Yeah.
deserves a balance. I remember my parents, they would pretty much let me watch a lot of like the spooky, a lot of the hardcore horror movies. But if it had like sex or something in it, then they'd be like, oh no, that's not for you. That's not for you. I'm like, all right, I could watch somebody's limbs get chopped off or
I
their
know.
head decapitated. But and it's not like the sex scenes back then were, even crazy or nothing, but it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, this is the threshold right here. This is the
It's funny
threshold.
too, because like in most of Europe, it's the exact opposite, where it's like there are tits out in commercials sometimes, but the
Mhm.
violence is toned down a lot more. So it's very strange, and I think it speaks to the mentality of our country a little bit, that we're so okay with violence, but then anytime there's a sex scene, it's like, whoa. Um, but I also love horror, so you get a little bit of both of that in most horror, so I'm okay with that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like I say, everybody, the parents they pick and choose, and then everybody starts picking and choosing. Like I remember I would ride around with my dad. He would listen to explicit music. But when I would want to buy the same CD, they bought me the edited version. And I'm like,
No.
but I've already heard it in his car, but they're like, yeah, but when you're listening to it yourself, it's just no curse words. I'm like, all right, all right.
It's funny that you say that, because I vividly remember when I was probably I'm going to say 8 years old, give or take. My sister's boyfriend at the time got me a birthday gift, and it was the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio in it.
Taking me back. Taking me back.
And apparently, at least one song has swear words in it, and my parents made me give it back to him so he could return it. And I'm like, wait, so you're okay with me watching all this rated R stuff where they're like saying fuck this and shit that and stuff, but I can't listen to a song with that in it? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, parental logic, sometimes is just is funny. But we as we get older, we start to look back on it and we're like, oh, this is this maybe wasn't the most logical decision, but we then you start. It's nothing like getting older and then having conversations with your parents about how they raised you, and then just seeing the interesting turns that goes. It's
Yeah.
always
And
hilarious.
it's sometimes their plans backfire a bit too.
Yeah.
Because what this is another really vivid film related memory that I have. And it was, again, when I was younger, I want to say maybe 11, give or take a couple years. And we went to like, I don't know if this is something they have everywhere, but in where I was, it was half price books. So it was like used bookstore, but then they also had like old VHS and stuff that you could buy there. And I don't even remember what the horror film I wanted to buy was, but there was a horror VHS that I wanted to buy, and my mom said, no, but you can get this one. So I got the one that she said I could get. And it was Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, Gary Oldman. Great film. I'm guessing she hadn't seen it though, because I was watching it when we got home, and I got to the scene that's the first encounter with Gary Oldman and Lucy when he's like part wolf.
Yeah.
And I just remember I like was so traumatized by what I was seeing on the screen that I stopped it, went downstairs, and stepped up to my mother sitting in the living room. I was like, I can't believe you let me watch that. It's like, so it does backfire sometimes. Again, I doubt she had seen it before that. But I really wish I could remember what the VHS I wanted to get was, so I could know as an adult like which one was really the worst film to let a kid that age watch, because I cannot remember it for the life of me. But I remember that was a very traumatizing scene for me. I love that movie now, but for
Oh,
a kid that age, it was very confusing.
oh yeah. I mean, sometimes like everybody has their own perception of things. So, parents, they may look at something and they're like, oh, this seems fun. Let's go. Like I remember I took
Yeah.
my mom to see Super Bad. She's like, oh, I want to see Super Bad, and we get in the theater and then the penis drawings start
Oh
happening.
no.
She's just like, what is going on here? So it's yeah, it's always a fun thing. It's always a fun
Yeah.
thing. We got Kira and Mika in the building from the Double Feature podcast. Thank y'all for stopping by. Yes, Superbad was awesome. Superbad was awesome. It just was highly inappropriate at the
Yeah.
at the time to see with your mom. Like
That's my ex brother-in-law just thought it would be a good idea to watch Borat with my grandparents.
oh,
So I definitely feel your pain there.
oh no, I
That
I
was
was
traumatizing.
I was that kid. Well, I wasn't even a kid at the time. I was a younger adult. I was that younger adult who I like to troll. So when Bruno came out on DVD, I bought it and I would show it. I would go around like to different family members' houses and show Bruno, and just to see the reactions of people. And it was just hilarity. It was just hilarity
Oh
ensued,
man.
you know. But
Just to be a fly on the wall and see people's reactions while watching. That's the best kind of people watching right there.
yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is. I feel, that's why I feel like, everybody has their little inner joker, that they've got to get out, every once in a while. Every once in a while. Um, now, do you have a favorite subgenre? Like I know we talked about uterus horror, earlier, but do you have a favorite subgenre, or is that it, or you
I
know?
mean, that probably is my favorite. But if I were to pick something else, I mean, this is a very broad one, but I really just like ghost hauntings, haunted house type movies. Probably because it's weird. Those feel more real to me than most like slasher films and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and of all the different subgenres of horror, those kinds of films are the ones that scare me the most too. So that's probably my favorite, and I like it because they're like even within that you can get so much variability. Like watching something like Crimson Peak is a very different experience than watching something like the Blair Witch Project, even though they're technically they would both fit into that. But yeah, I like the different ways that people interpret ghosts and the supernatural. I feel like there are so many different ways you can do it, both visually and storytelling wise. But yeah, and I like being scared, and those are the ones that are pretty much guaranteed to scare me.
Oh yeah, especially you got the lights down low, and a good ghost story like it's classic. It's classic. It's
Mm-hmm.
classic cinema. We got Mika. She says, "Do you have a favorite ghost story slash haunted house film?" Great question.
Oh, that is so tough to pick one. This is kind of a more recent favorite, but honestly, it also falls a bit into the found footage subgenre. But I love Hell House LLC.
Yes.
To this day, one of the films that scares me more than anything, and it's the only instance of a clown in a horror film that has scared me, because I've never been someone who's affected by clowns, but the clown in that one is terrifying.
Oh, it just got more and more ridiculous because I'm like, it was already creepy in the first one, but then in the second one, I don't know if have you seen the
I've
sequels?
seen all of them, yes.
Yeah, when he's in the doorway, I was like, bro,
Mm-mm.
like I give up. I give
Nope.
I give up. I
Yeah,
give up.
that one is, and I like that they're so subtle about the scares in those too. Like,
Yes.
it's just like you see something in the corner or something's just standing there when you know it shouldn't be there. And
Yes.
that's what makes it scary. It doesn't have to be this big, like jumping out from behind a wall kind of thing. It can be those like nice, subtle, just like a little pivot of the camera to reveal something. And I love that.
Yes.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about some of the scenes from that movie.
So what did you think of the latest one? Because I really, really enjoyed that one.
I loved the latest one. I liked it because with sequels, one of my biggest things is I want expansion of the lore. And this one did such a good job of expanding it, like not just expanding what was happening at the hotel because we're in a totally new location, but expanding like the entire thing, kind of getting to the root of everything. And I liked that we switched it up and it was a different location this time, and all the different threads that tied together that really made all four films come together in a nice way. Because I liked the second and third one, but I didn't love them.
Yeah.
This new one I think is the best since the first film. And again, it's a lot of that really subtle scare stuff. Like I think there's one scene where you just at the end of a hallway you just see a hand like gripping the door frame, like
Yes.
little things like that. It's so good. But yeah, I thought this story was really good. I do think with the new one, my only like real gripe with it was that the reason for the people not leaving the house sooner was a little less believable than in some of the
Yeah.
previous ones.
Yeah.
And there's one little bit at the end that I won't get into for the people who haven't seen it, since it is a newer film. There's one thing that I think is one bit of an unexplained element that bothered me a little bit. But other than that, I thought it was great. And definitely brought a lot of the same, not the same scares, but like similar vibes to the first one that made me love the first one.
Oh yeah, like I think all of them are pretty. I mean, it's a pretty great franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only one I really may not have cared for was probably three. Like but I could rewatch all of them except for
Yeah.
probably three. But they were. It's a good franchise. The latest one knocked it out the park for me, especially
Mm-hmm.
with the clowns.
Yes.
It's just something about that imagery that and I don't know how it inherently strikes fear in all of us like clowns. It's not natural. It's not like a natural thing,
And
so
I think it's something about the clowns in this franchise that's so scary, is that there's something very old timey about them.
yes.
And I think that weirdly makes them scarier than like the brightly colored like Ronald McDonald type clown, you know? There's something about the black and white and just a lot of them have like the sad faces. A lot of them are made to look like for some reason back in the day they were made to look like homeless men, you know?
Yeah.
So like so I think there's something about them that's creepier because of the old-timey look to them as well. But that
I
actually
agree.
just made me think of something else that like was it just me? Those weren't masks they were wearing, right? They just had like it was men just standing really still with their faces painted in the latest one.
Yeah, it was men just painted faces,
That was
which
so weird to me. Because in the first one it was obviously like a mask
yeah.
on a mannequin or on a person depending on the scene. But I thought that was such a strange choice and I would love to know why cuz like every time I looked at him I was like that's a person. How can they just look at that and think it's just a statue or something? That is a person. I would not stay in that house with two just like creepy clown dudes just hanging out, standing really still.
But you know what? That's like a little expansion on the urban legend. You know, when the babysitter
Yeah.
she comes to babysit and the parents are like, "Oh, you can hang out in our room," and she's like, "Oh, well, can I cover these two creepy clown statues you got up there?" And they're like, "We don't have any creepy clown statues. Get out of the house." It's like So I don't know. For me, whether it's porcelain or whether it's skin, I don't want it. I don't need it in my
Yeah.
vicinity.
No.
Send out the clowns.
Set it on fire and run.
Burn it. Burn it down. We got Kira. She says films about hauntings are so eerie. They do play close to home. I truly believe in it. Yes, yes. There's
Absolutely.
always something about the supernatural. Always something about the damn supernatural. Crimson Peak is a great choice. Very underrated in my opinion. I
Yeah.
still have not seen Crimson Peak yet.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm a sucker for Guillermo del Toro in general. I think he is one of the greatest working filmmakers right now. But that one is so beautifully done. Just visually, like the story is great too, but visually, that is one of the most striking films I've seen in a long time.
Oh
And fun
yes.
fact, it was the first film that I saw by myself in theaters.
Hey,
I
listen. The
so
solo
that's
theater.
it
Yes,
sticks in my head.
yes, stick it to the man because the solo theater experience is underrated as hell. I, I,
Mm-hmm.
I tell people this all the time. Whether you're with somebody or not, whether you go with friends or not, go to the theater yourself every once in a while, just by yourself and kick your feet up. The huge cinema matinee time, so you can avoid the crowds. It's an amazing time. It's an amazing
Yeah.
time. You
Yeah, I
know.
think I was one of like 5 people in the theater when I saw that one.
That's the
Just
best time. That's the best time, because you get too many people in there, it starts to get a little foolish sometimes, just
yeah.
a little bit, a little bit. Kara says, "Oh my God, just been Telehouse LLC films. As soon as you see the clowns, I'm gone."
Yeah.
Yes, yes, the clowns. Yeah, everybody's scared of these damn
Yeah.
clowns.
There's no way I would have stayed in that house after the clowns.
Now, Kira says, Molly, honest opinion, do you like the Innkeepers? It gets a lot of hate, but I love it.
So I will tentatively say yes. I've only seen that one once and it was a while ago. It's actually one that I've been meaning to rewatch, but I remember liking it when I saw it a few years ago.
Okay.
And like that's another great director. My God, I just like Ty West. God, I don't know.
Yeah.
His name just flew out of my head for a second. He's also a fantastic director, and I really liked Innkeepers. House of the Devil is another one of his that I've seen more times. I
Yes.
love that one as well. And then obviously like X and Pearl. Gotta love that too. But yeah, it's one I can get from what I remember of Innkeepers. I can understand why people wouldn't like it as much just because it is a slow burn. It focuses a lot more on atmosphere than it does on in your face scares and stuff. So for like the more casual horror fan, I can get why that wouldn't be appealing, but I think that it is entirely unsettling. The two leads in it, I also love both of them. And it's so funny. Pat Healy, I feel like you see him popping up and stuff all the time, when you don't expect him to. I wish I could remember. There was like a big movie that I just saw in theaters recently that he was in, and I was like, oh, what's he doing in here? Because I'm so used to seeing him in horror stuff, but he surprises you in places.
Was it Madam Web? Was he in Madam Web, or did you
No,
check
I
out
haven't
Madam?
seen that.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah,
if I'll see that one in theaters.
yeah, me neither. I'm hearing just when your main star is interviewing like she's interviewing, something
Yeah,
something is amok,
yeah.
Um, but
It's unfortunate, but
yeah, yeah. Hopefully they
yeah,
get it together eventually,
someday,
you know.
someday.
Mika says, love Ty West. Yes, yes, a lot of Ty West love. House of the Devil is great. Willie's movies and music. Hey all, what's up? What's up, Wilkie? Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for stopping by. I love the name. Love the name. Yes, yes. So my next question would be, do you have a favorite decade of horror? Or one that sticks out to you that's like a fun go-to?
That is really tough. I feel like there are so many great decades. I mean, obviously, just because of my age, 90s horror was a big influence on me growing up.
Yes.
Trying to think of like the decade that I go back to the most when I rewatch stuff. And I feel like it's usually either I feel like I usually go back to 90s or more recent, like in the
Okay.
past 10 years. Um, just because like with the 90s, this bleeds into the 80s as well, but I like the more like meta slashers that we were getting in the 90s, like obviously Scream. I am an Urban Legend fan. I prefer Urban Legend to the other film that was popular around the same time. I know what you did last summer, but I
Listen,
might be in the minority with that one.
listen, I'm with you there because I
Okay,
recently tried to rewatch I Know What You Did Last Summer, and oh my God, no.
it's the one thing that makes that movie watchable for me is Sarah Michelle Gellar. She's amazing in that, and her whole chase scene is the best part of that movie for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and like Urban Legend, like honestly hate the final girl in Urban Legend, but I love everything else about it. But so you get a lot of those meta slashers, but then I feel like you're also getting a lot of really like fun practical effects horror stuff like Demon Knight is a movie that I rewatch all the time. Absolutely love that movie. And it's one of those ones that it's so fun and corny, but it also is like like if you were a kid watching that, it would still be terrifying. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
it's
Even though
terrifying to this day.
yeah,
You know.
I love it. And I mean, Jada is amazing in that movie. I think I'm still to this day sad we didn't get a sequel of her doing more demon hunting stuff. Um, but then obviously, and the more recent stuff, I find myself rewatching a lot of stuff that has come out like in not necessarily just the 2010s, like even more recent. And I think it's with that, it's because we're getting so much more variety. I feel
Yeah.
like in the past 10 years, there have been so many different new, unique horror films. And I think that's why I like the 90s too, is because you were seeing a lot of those unique ones coming out, but then it kind of started to get repetitive again and like people trying to just like add sequels onto things or doing reboots and stuff. And now we're kind of getting back into that, even though we are still, I obviously like one of the ones that I rewatched recently is Evil Dead Rise, which is a legacy one. But I feel like we're still like, I mean, stuff like Bones and All is a recent one that I absolutely love, which is a fantastic film. Um, and of course now anytime I try to think of something right away, it just immediately leaves my brain. But I think nostalgia for the 90s and like meta slashers and like kind of corny practical effects stuff, and then now it's just like the sheer variety and the working filmmakers that we have now. We're getting a lot more diversity, which I think is good too. And I
Yes.
think that's part of the variety too, is we're getting stories that we wouldn't normally have heard because we're expanding the pool of filmmakers and actors and writers and stuff that are making these films.
Yes, yes. And it's needed,
Yeah.
it's needed. Like I said before, these different perspectives, like I love that I can, jump into a theater and watch something like Cocaine Bear one day,
Yes.
and then the next watch something like Men, and have a
Yeah.
conversation about both. And it's just like it's a great time.
Yeah.
It's a
Which
great
Cocaine
time.
Bear is one of the films that my mom has watched because she's not a big horror person. But one of the times she visited recently, that was the one she requested. Don't know why that's the one she wanted, but she liked it.
It's just very over the top.
Yeah.
It's a fun watch. It's a fun watch. We got Kara, she said 70s horror is top tier. Yes, yes, 70s is up there. Mika says favorite modern day horror film. Favorite
Oh
modern day.
man. I am going to preface this by saying I am the most indecisive person in the world. I can barely even decide when I'm going to eat at any given time. But you know, again, this might be a little bit of a controversial pick. But if, and I'm assuming by modern day you mean like made recently, because this is a film made recently, but it takes place in the past. I actually am obsessed with the 2018 Suspiria remake.
Yes.
Um, I I obviously love the original. I know a lot of people are diehard where they're like, "Oh, the new one sucks. The original's better." I can appreciate both of them because they're so different. But I just the story in I feel like there was more plot in the remake, and the performances. I mean, it's really hard to go wrong with Tilda Swinton. She is amazing, and the dancing in it and the costume design and the set design, like there's so many little details in that, and it's also horrific as well. Like that first scene, with a character, for those who haven't seen it, there's a character named Olga who has a very horrific scene in a room full of mirrors. And I remember that was one of the films that I saw in theaters by myself the first time I watched it. And again, I think I was one of 3 people in the theater at the time. And I just remember sitting there during that scene just being like, holy shit. Because it was very unexpected. But that's one that, and it's one of those films that every time I rewatch it, I feel like I notice new things that I didn't notice before. And so I think that is beautiful. And the score, the music in that is amazing. Tom York from Radiohead did it, and it's,
Yes.
oh, so beautiful. It's dark, but that poster right there where my thumb is for the Suspiria soundtrack. So,
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. But, it's always so great when, someone gets the soundtrack to a horror film specifically, because sound is just as much as important as,
mhm.
what's going on the screen. It's a
Yeah.
character in its own, so it
I mean, to this day, one of my favorite concerts I've been to, I've seen John Carpenter twice perform his scores live. Um, so it's definitely like music is a really big thing for me in movies, which is also why Bones and All is one of my recent favorites, because that one is one that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the score for that, and it's also beautiful. And Bones and All in Suspiria 2018, directed by the same guy too. So
yes,
there's a
yes.
theme going on here unintentionally.
Yes, yes, getting a lot of Suspiria love. Mika's the Suspiria remake, great choice. Kira says, love the newest version of Suspiria, better than the original, more depth. Tilda Swinton is next level, otherworldly, honestly.
Yes, she
Yes,
is so
yes.
iconic. Ugh,
Yeah,
I love
it
her.
was definitely a great choice to add her in the mix, and to bring what she brought to the table, you know. Now, if there was a horror film that you wish that you could have been on the set for, which film would that be?
Ooh, see, that one is also hard because I don't know if I would want to pick something that it would be fun to hang out on the set, or if I want to pick something that's more like would be interesting technically to see made.
Ooh,
Um, if I could if I could go back in time, be on any movie set, I honestly would probably pick the original Nightmare on Elm Street, just because it is the horror film that made me fall in love with the genre. I think Wes Craven was such a visionary, and it would be so interesting to talk to him and pick his brain about stuff. And obviously, like being on set and seeing Robert Englund become Freddy Krueger and stuff. So I think that that would have been a really interesting one to be on set for.
Yes, yes. That I mean, that would have been a fun one. That would have been, I always love asking people those questions because people turn into kids. It's like they're like, oh, let me be on this cool set where the prosthetics are crazy and just the wildest things are happening. So
Yeah, that's why I was like, do I want to pick something where there was a lot of really cool creature effects just to see those made? Because I almost went that route. But you still, I mean, the burn makeup and stuff is still pretty amazing for Freddy Krueger, especially in the first one. They did a great job with it.
oh yeah, oh yeah, they did top tier, top tier. Now, is there a horror film that you wish you could see again for the first time? Just to get that first time experience.
Oh yeah, it's. I mean, there's so many that, especially ones that have really good twists at the end too. Um, you know, I kind of wish that I could see. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Blair Witch Project. I would like to see that again for the first time, just because that again, that's another one of those ones that goes with the subtle scares, and that really sticks with me. So that's one of the ones that no matter how many times I see it, it still scares me.
Yes.
But I just remember the first time, especially because the first time I watched it was still back when you weren't sure if it was actually real or not. So I just to experience that uncertainty and watching it and not knowing if what I'm seeing is actually real or not, and then that final shot of the film is something that has always stuck in my brain. So to watch that again and like get that feeling of, oh my god, I know what's about to happen right now. I that would be a really cool experience, especially if I could go back and watch it for the first time on the big screen, because I was young enough when it came out that I had to wait until it came out on VHS to watch it at home. So it would have been nice to go back in time, watch it again for the first time on the big screen.
Yes, yes. Which runs into well, Wilkie's question, what's a horror movie you wish you could see in the theater, because it's a certain experience you're getting in the theater, like
Yeah,
I feel like not every movie maybe warrants a theater experience, but it is a there's nothing like it,
yeah.
you know.
I I think one that I have never seen on the big screen that I would love to see on the big screen is the original Alien. Um, that is one of my favorite horror films of all
Don't
time, and
tell
I
me,
think that that's one that would be so amazing to see on the big screen,
yes.
not just because of the scale of everything, especially like when they first go onto the ship, the alien ship, and kind of investigate, like seeing that on a big screen, but also for the sound part of it. Because I have a pretty good home theater setup. Like my partner is invested in like made sure we have a really good sound system in there and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's pretty good, but I think that there's something about seeing that on the big screen and just seeing the xenomorph in all its glory on the big screen, I think would just hit a little different than watching it at home.
Oh yeah, because the sound will make a movie with even like a flawed movie, so to speak, will make it like amazing. Like I recently saw, well, when The Nun 2 came out in theaters, I saw it
Mhm.
in Dolby Digital, and the sound, I know a lot of people did not mess with that movie, but the sound made it amazing for me. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, I'm sold. I'm sold. So it's sound is very important. Sound is very
Mhm.
important. And Alien is a great choice. I love that choice because I feel like that film is like, you're trapped on a ship, it's very like it's one room, like, which is kind of like a lot of the horror that I like, where someone is in a house or in a basement, or underground facility somewhere like that. Like I love those types of films, so it'd be great to see on the big screen.
I feel like on a big screen, you also would probably be, at least I, because I'm a big wimp. I love horror films, but I am a huge wimp. I would be paranoid at all times that there would be something behind me if I watched it in movie theater. That happened when I saw Hereditary in theater, so I'm sure it would happen if I saw Alien in a theater.
No, I understand. I really only get like that with spiders. If I'm watching
Oh,
something like spiders on the screen, I
yeah,
automatically think of like, oh, something's behind me, something's above me. I'm yelling at the screen like, guy, look above you. There's this big gigantic creature. But in reality, I'd be that guy, I'd
yeah,
get eaten, point
yeah.
blank period. I'd get eaten, you know. So it is what it is. We got some love for the Amityville Horror, the original. Yes, yes. Mika said she would love to see Alien in theaters. A lot of love for the Alien franchise, in
Yeah.
this building tonight. Um, yes, yes. Molly nailed it. Alien would be a great one. Yes, Wookie thinks so as well. Part of the fun of seeing a horror movie in the theater is having everyone's reactions around you.
Yeah.
Yes. And Tyrone, don't see Sting. Watch trailer new.
The
Oh,
whole time you were talking about that, I was picturing the trailer for Sting in my
oh my God. I'm
that
already. I'm
that one
already.
looks really unsettling.
Okay. Okay.
There's
We
also
going.
I missed this one when I was at Fantastic Fest, but I think it's a French film called Infested, and I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly what people told me about it, it is also spiders.
Oh,
But I heard it was amazing. I just unfortunately it conflicted with the time of another movie I was seeing, so I missed that one. But I feel like we're getting some more spider horror recently.
well, they're making the Arachnophobia. I think the remake. So
That's
we're gonna get a
right.
flood.
Yeah.
Especially with Arachnophobia in theaters, we're gonna get a flood. So
Wow, I totally forgot they were doing that.
yeah, yeah, they're pumping out these remakes like nobody's business.
Yeah.
Like nobody's
Hey, if
business.
they do it well, I'm all for it. But it'd be
Yeah.
nice to see some more original stuff too.
Well, yeah, it's getting like I love a good remake, but like you said, it's nice to see original things, especially I feel like we're turning them around too soon. Like what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Speak No Evil just came out, and yet we're
Yeah.
just like what are we doing? It's not like it was in a
Yeah.
completely different language that you couldn't understand, and people are like, oh, like you could understand what they're saying. Like what why do we need to remake this? But
Yeah. And I also will say I that is one remake I'm curious to watch just because I was probably in the minority and I didn't love Speak No Evil. So I would be curious to watch the remake just to see if they kind of like fix some of the things that I didn't like about the original. Um, but didn't they did the same thing with what was that? One Cut of the Dead? Wasn't it only like a year later there, but it wasn't an American remake. I think it was like French or something.
yeah, yeah.
um and they're also doing the Train to Busan remake,
Oh
which
yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but I think it takes place on the East Coast somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so it's and I get it, like they're popular movies and a lot of people won't watch horror films that are subtitled. So I definitely get why they do that, but it does seem really really fast to be doing those. Like I feel like there should be like a 5-year minimum that you have to wait
Yeah.
before you do a remake or something.
At least, they don't even they at least wait another 5 years before they give us another Spider-Man. Don't move faster than they're giving us Spider-Man.
Yeah,
But who knows? Who knows? This it's a new world. It's definitely a new world out there.
yeah.
Uh Kira says that damn ending for Speak No Evil. Yes, yes. And Last Train to New York, I believe. Yes. That's the
Okay.
name. Yeah. Yeah. That should be it's I mean, I'm gonna check it out, but
Yeah,
like I feel like because I was one of those kids who was just like, I don't feel like reading the subtitles, like I feel like I'm gonna
yeah,
miss something, but once I sat down and I dove into like Korean horror and Indonesian horror, and I was just like shutting myself off to a whole vast world. And some of my favorite horror films are now, international horror. Like I would have never checked out like High Tension and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
it's yeah, I love it. I love it. I think that some of the best ideas come from over the pond.
Yeah.
So
There's less recycling over there, a lot
yeah,
more original. And especially because I feel like that's one of the reasons why I love, like you mentioned, the Korean and the Indonesian stuff. I feel like they have such a vast array of folklore to draw from too. So we're getting all these different perspectives, like that movie The Wailing and stuff has all
yes.
this wild things that I couldn't have even imagined until I saw that film. And it's a lot of it is rooted in like cultural differences and folklore and stuff. So I love seeing that kind of stuff. I was an anthropology major in college, so I really like things that kind of let me tap into different cultures.
Yes, love it. Love it. Love it. Yes, The Wailing was a great film. It definitely it hit different. It definitely hit different. A lot of people were like, "Oh, it's a slow burn," but I'm like, "Listen, those slow burns, when they hit,
Yes.
do they hit?" So it's definitely up there. Now, my next question for you would be, does horror do anything specifically for you for your mental health, in any way?
Yes. I mean, I've always been kind of like, I think this probably applies to a lot of people that like horror. I've always been kind of like the weird loner kid.
Yes.
And a lot of the ways that I describe the experience of watching horror for me is that a lot of my anxiety is rooted in feeling out of control of my environment or the situation that I'm in, um, and feeling unsafe because I don't have that control. And what I like about watching horror is that it's almost like in a way exposure therapy to a
Yes.
lot of the things that make you uncomfortable, but it's in a controlled environment. So like you're not going to get stabbed by Ghostface, but there's something that's exciting about that, and you get that terror and you get that adrenaline rush and stuff, but at the end of it you can be like, ha ha ha, that was a great time, we're not dead. So I think that helps, and it kind of takes you out. At least for me, it takes me out of a lot of the stuff that like gets into my head. Um,
Yeah.
because I'm fully focused on this. I'm fully focused on the terror or the plot or whatever it is that I'm watching, and it kind of lets me forget about the stuff that is weighing down on me. And it helps me work through stuff too. Like Ginger Snaps is one of my all-time favorite horror films. And when I was younger, when I first saw it, it was helping me work through a lot of stuff in terms of like being the weird loner kid. And at the time, I also like was like self-harm and stuff like that. And that movie, since I could relate to the Fitzgerald sisters, helped me work through a lot of stuff. But now as an adult, I have various health issues that kind of in a lot of ways mirror a lot of what Ginger went through in that film and like her transformation into a werewolf. And so it's kind of helped me like deal with or come to terms with a lot of my own health issues and like the physical effects that these health issues have on me. So it's there's like this level of catharsis and also distraction at the same time. Um,
Yes.
and it's something that I come back to again and again. And like even things like I just saw Martyrs for the first time recently, and I simultaneously felt horrified and like I needed a mental health break after seeing that, but at the same time, just some of this like the imagery and the messages like were so profound. It kind of helped me deal with some other stuff that I was going through at the time when I watched it too. So I think a lot of it is catharsis for horror. I think that's what draws a lot of people to it. But I also just like the experience of being taken out of real life. And I feel like horror uniquely takes me out of that mindset more so than a lot of other genres.
Gotcha. Oh my God. Like I love that answer, but Martyrs, holy shit. Because I
Yeah.
recently saw it for the first time not too long ago as well. And it was there's only two films that did that for me. It was Eden Lake. When I
Oh my
got to the
God.
end of Eden Lake, I'm like, it just ruined my whole day. I was just like, I can't
Yeah.
recover the day it's a wrap. But Martyrs, I was literally on the couch just questioning everything. Like it was
Yeah.
so it was so heavy. I don't think I could watch Martyrs again, to be honest. Like the first half was I was just like, oh yeah, I'm digging this. But the second half,
Yeah.
holy
It
shit.
definitely takes a turn.
you know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and
it's
it's definitely anxiety inducing. And that's kind of like it's for me it was anxiety in a controlled environment. So I could
yeah.
feel all the things I normally feel, but I knew that I was going to be okay at the end. But that's on my list of films that like borderline give me a panic attack. I would say the three that come to mind are Martyrs, Eden Lake is definitely on there,
Yes.
and Mother, the one with Jennifer Lawrence. Those
Ooh.
three films were very triggering for me in a lot of ways, as well as some other ones to a lesser extent. But those are the big three that like I don't know if I can watch them again. I've seen them all once. I probably will rewatch Martyrs just because of my partner has been wanting to watch it because he hasn't seen it yet. So I'll probably watch it with him. But I'm going to probably have to heavily self-medicate before I do.
Listen, you gotta do what you gotta do,
Yeah.
to get through. You gotta do what you gotta do. Um, we got Kira says, yes, all the feels, but overall an enjoyable time with no risk to self.
Yeah.
Yes. Some more Ginger Snaps love. She revisits it often. Martyrs was a ride. One time watch for me.
Yeah.
Yes. And Mika says, yes, Eden Lake, that ending. Oh my God. That yeah, it's I was not expecting it at all. I was just like, oh, this is because I can take a non-happy ending, but
Yeah.
like, oh my God. So yeah, if you haven't seen Eden Lake, folks, check out Eden Lake
Yeah.
once. Just do it once.
Some of my favorite horror endings are the not happy ones, but that one was a took it a little too far.
Yeah, they turned up the notch, all the way. Now for my next question, it would be, do you have a favorite horror television show, that or favorite, shows that stick out to you in the genre?
Yeah. I mean, obviously just because I'm a millennial and I have to do Buffy the Vampire Slayer as one of
Yes.
them. Especially because I feel like that's one that not only is just a fun watch, but there are so many episodes that were very influential at the time and are still talked about in like media studies classes, like the episode "The Body" or or I can't remember the name of the episode, but the one that had to do with SA. Like there's a lot of episodes that were really starting really important conversations at the time.
Yes.
On top of just being like awesome lady kicking monsters' asses. Like there's a lot to like about it. And it's also one of those things that even with what has come out about Whedon, I feel like it has grown so much bigger than him. And we can recognize the things in that were his negative influence versus the positive influence that people like Sarah Michelle Gellar had on the making of the show. So that one's definitely like that's what I've rewatched that probably like 4 times all the way through the show. Which there's a lot of episodes, so that's a lot of
Yeah.
watching. More recent ones like What We Do in the Shadows is absolutely one of my favorite TV shows currently on. It is hilarious and I love every second of it. I'm trying to think of one that doesn't have to do with vampires because I keep mentioning vampires stuff because there are
Listen,
so
it's
many
the
great
theme,
ones.
you know.
I'm trying to think of stuff that I've watched. Oh, This is actually one that I mentioned when we were on the Bloody Disgusting podcast together that I feel like is so underrated. All of Us Are Dead. The Korean zombie one on Netflix.
Yes.
It was so good.
So
And when it came out, I don't remember anyone talking about it. And if anyone watching this right now has not seen that show, it's on Netflix. It is Korean, right? I'm pretty sure it's Korean. Yeah. It's a zombie show. It's so good. And again, it's like they bring different stuff to the zombie subgenre that was unexpected, which I loved. And it's a show that I hope gets more attention. I've heard, at least, like, I think after our conversation last time, I looked it up to see if they were doing a season 2. And I think the plan is that they are, but I don't know if or when that will happen. But I hope it does, because they definitely left it with a cliffhanger.
well, they better. Netflix is up in their subscription prices, so where else is the money going? Netflix.
Yeah.
It better be going to All of Us Are Dead season 2.
Yeah.
Like I love a good Korean zombie, flick or show, like All of Us Are Dead, or even I don't know if you've seen it, #Alive on
I
Netflix.
love that movie.
That
It's
was a
so
great one
good.
as well.
Man, in Korea, they're doing really well with zombie stuff. Like I'm liking a lot of the zombie horror content that they're putting out more than what is coming out in the US.
Listen, it is what it is.
Especially because that's #Alive is another one that they did an American remake of, and I watched it, and it's not one that I would recommend.
Yeah, sometimes I'm just like, leave it alone. Like sometimes being an American, you watch like the one that they place in front of you first. Like I watched Quarantine first, and then
Same.
maybe a decade later I watched Wreck, and I'm like, holy shit, what was I doing? What was I doing? This is like it almost made it unwatchable. Almost made Quarantine unwatchable for me. Shout out to everybody who liked Quarantine, but
Yeah.
if you have not seen Wreck, holy shit, Wreck 1 and 2, back to back.
I like both of them. I also saw Quarantine first. And I think what I appreciated about Quarantine is that even though like it's virtually shot for shot the same film as Wreck, I liked that they changed the lore around the zombie virus in Quarantine compared to Wreck. So that even though it's almost the same, like it's still kind of a little bit different. Especially because I'm not a religious person, so I kind of appreciated the more scientific approach. But the more I watch both of them, the more like Wreck is clearly the superior one. But I can appreciate both of them in their own way.
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't completely terrible. It was just, just Wreck. I just super go up for Wreck, not the third and the fourth one, because obviously there was a turn there for me. But
I still like the third and fourth one. But yeah, the first and second Wreck are horrifying. Yes. And that's another one, because you're saying like kind of like single location things, like that's both of those single location, and they pull that off very well.
Yes, I love it. I love being trapped, not in real life, but on the screen.
Do you do escape rooms a lot?
Yes, I love a good escape room. I'm the guy who loves to go, love to get invited, but don't expect me to save everybody, because I'm just happy to be here, to be honest. Like I'm horrible at puzzles. I'm like, hey, what are we doing? But I'm happy to be in the vicinity.
I've never
so.
done an escape room, and I definitely want to. I'm a puzzle person, and I'm also a little bit of a control freak, so I feel like that might be something that I'm good.
Yeah, well, listen. We if we're ever all in the same vicinity, we know we've got a leader. We know Molly is gonna be the head of this ship right here.
I'll probably be panicking the whole time, but I can still do it.
Yes. We got Kira. She says, check out brand new cherry flavor. Yes, if you
Oh,
have
I
not,
haven't seen that one yet.
that one is really good.
Listen.
That one is really good. Would love to hear your breakdown, the thoughts about that one. Mika says all of us are dead. Great show. Jaleesa, all of us are dead was top tier. Yes, yes. Was hoping Black Summer would return. I've heard things. I haven't seen it, but my brother, he really goes up for Black Summer, so
I
maybe I have to
really
check that
liked
one.
that. And it's what was this? Z Nation was the one on Sci-Fi, and it's weird
Yeah.
because tonally they are totally different, but they're the same universe,
Uh-huh.
which is so weird. Because I can't remember. I think I watched Black Summer first. So, and even though Z Nation had been on for a while already at that point, but then when I watched Z Nation, I was like, wow, it's weird that these came from like the same minds and the same creators, but they are so like visually different, tonally different. And I like both of them, but I definitely was a fan of Black Summer. There's something that felt very real about that in a way that I think shows like The Walking Dead didn't feel as real, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. It makes sense, because it was a lot of goofy stuff going on in The Walking Dead, but it was entertaining goofiness, but
Yeah.
goofiness nonetheless. We got Paul. Paul draws in the building. Hey, what's up, Paul? Love the name. We got Kira the Crazies remake was well
Mm,
done as well. Yes, a lot of
yeah.
love for the Crazies. Yes, Mika, how could I forget? From from if you have not seen, have you seen From, Molly?
I've only seen the first season, but I loved it. And it's because I think I watched it at a time when I could watch it on my Amazon Prime account. And
Yeah,
now for season 2, I think if I want to watch it, I either have to wait or I have to pay.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
haven't done season 2 yet, but I loved the first season.
Yeah, they got me. They like the first season, it was a fun watch. Like, like I did the month or the free month trial or whatever on FX or whichever streaming platform it was. But this season two, like me and Taman Kane from Scream Kings, we did like episodic breakdowns of the whole season two, which was fun. More questions as that series goes on. But I can't wait for season three. Can't wait for
Yeah.
season three. You know. Um Kara says, Molly, your fur baby joining the stream is the best part of tonight's show. Fellow
Yeah.
cat mom here. Yes.
Yeah. I've had 2 different animals in my lap at some point during this. This one is Anton. He's
Yes.
my
Hey,
old man.
Anton. Yes.
And he
Yes.
he like he purposely knows when I am doing like podcasts or things like this and always comes in here to get in my lap because he knows I can't fight him off as well since I'm like talking and interacting.
Listen, he's got to get his 15 minutes of fame. He's got to get camera ready. Got to get ready.
His dog brother that was up here earlier, that one's Hopper. And then I have another dog named Ouija who's like 60 pounds, so he will not be in my lap at any point today. But he's around somewhere.
Yes, yes. I love it. You listen, animals, it's the best thing. It's the best thing on the planet. They bring camaraderie, they bring like speak about mental health. Like they're one of the
Yeah.
they bring massive amounts of positive energy to your mental health. You know. Now my next question for you would be, do you have a favorite horror villain? Like I know we were talking about Freddy earlier, but would
Mm-hmm.
Freddy be up there, or do you have somebody else in mind?
I mean, he's definitely up there. He might be my number one just
Okay.
because he has a very iconic look. He especially when you get into some of the later films in the franchise, they're a little bit kookier. Like his one-liners are so great. And like the stupid jokes that he makes that are like borderline dad jokes, but the most sinister kind of dad jokes you can think of. Um, and just like the creative kills. I love the whole I mean, I grew up having nightmares, so I like the idea of like the thing in your dream being able to come and kill you. And I feel like he because of that, he gets to have the most wild creative kills. so far beyond like any of the other slasher type characters. And he's just like, he's one of those people that like you hear his voice, you see his silhouette, you immediately know who it is. He is one of the most iconic weapons too. Like even though he is in your dreams and he can do whatever he want and he can turn into a giant worm thing and eat you, like he can do a lot, but also just his glove is so iconic and a really impractical yet horrifying weapon.
Yes. Yes. Shit, now that I think about it, it is impractical, but like when you're seeing it, you're like, oh, it's so terrifying. But in reality, how are you gonna move that thing? How
Yeah.
are you
I
gonna
mean, I feel like probably most of the damage he does is more accidental with that
yeah.
thing. But even just like in the first film when he holds it up, he's like, "This is God." Like that's horrifying. And so it makes the weapon a lot scarier. I think the only other villain that comes close to him in my mind would be who also is iconic and stuff, but less comedic would be Pinhead.
Oh
Also
yes.
love Pinhead, especially because he kind of in a way reminds me of Jigsaw, where it's like you're the one that opened the puzzle box, dude. I don't know what you thought was going to happen when you did that. You brought this upon yourself, so I don't know why you're trying to get out of it now. Like, so it's people who kind of bring it upon themselves, which is always fun. But I mean, it's whether it be original like Doug Bradley Pinhead, or I also love the newest Hellraiser film. I thought it was really good, and I loved the new Pinhead in that. She's did things that I did that I probably should. I was like, whoa, why is Pinhead really really hot right now? But yeah, so I mean they're both again like iconic looks, immediately recognizable. So definitely I like probably Pinhead or Freddy Krueger would be neck and neck for the top with me. It just depends if I want someone who is more genuinely horrifying or someone who is going to be doing really bad jokes the whole time he's killing me.
Yeah, he's Freddy's like the Spider-Man of the horror universe, with his one-liners.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's Kira, she says Freddy wins, not being able to sleep is next level. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mika says Pinhead is so diabolical.
Mm-hmm.
Love to hear some love for the new Hellraiser. Really enjoyed it.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And then Jamie
Jamie
Clayton asked her
Clayton.
Pinhead in a remake.
Oh, sorry, my dogs are freaking out.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. Special guest appearance.
Can you guys chill?
And
Thank
then
you. Okay.
Wilkie says Pinhead always freaked me out. Yes, Pinhead was definitely up there. It's funny, a lot of people watch that movie young, and it's one of those that I feel like a lot of parents might have protested back in the day, you
Yeah.
know.
And that's also it. Even though I love Pinhead, if you were to ask me my favorite Cenobite, it's Butterball all day, every
Hmm.
day. I love Butterball. I always was sad that Butterball was only in the first couple of films, and then they kind of like phased him out. But
Well, it's
guys,
iconic. That look was iconic,
mm-hmm.
so you can't replace that. Now you mentioned your favorite, horror villain, but do you have a favorite like final girl or a final boy?
uh, that I'm probably tied between two different people for that. But they're kind of similar in a way for my reasoning for liking them both. It would either be um oh my god, see this is what I'm saying. The names just leave my brain the second I try to think of them. Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. Could not think of her name. And obviously Ripley from Alien.
Yes.
And the reason I like both of them is because especially for the time period that those films were made, they are the most proactive final girls. Like
Yes.
they're not just like sitting around waiting for the killer to find them, and they're not like just running around screaming like a lot of the other ones. Like they are both like actively coming up with plans to try to like get rid of the bad guy and try to save not just themselves but the people around them as well. And I also just love Ripley because that is the epitome of like men not listening to the woman and the woman being right and all of them dying because they didn't listen to her. That was basically the start of the pandemic, was the story of Ripley in that
Pretty
movie.
much, pretty much. Still is the story of
Yes.
the pandemic, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. But I think both of them are just, I like the ones that are like have more fight to them. Not to like diss any of the other ones, like Sally Hardesty's obviously very iconic. And like obviously Jamie Lee Curtis is one of the most iconic final girls in horror history and stuff. But there's just something about those two that I like. I like a woman with a plan. So those two are pretty much neck and neck for me for my top final girl spot.
oh yeah, oh yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, we got some love for Ripley, you know, claps for Ripley. Yes, Ripley is badass. Ripley was badass, kept her cool throughout the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, iconic. Definitely up there. Definitely up there. Now we're getting down to nearing the end of the interview. You know, I want to thank you for rocking out with me, you know, so far, and answering all of my questions, and just making this an awesome interview. You know, getting to know you a little bit better through the lens of your love for horror. You know, so one of my last questions would be: we are entering into an era of like virtual reality, and there's going to be a space for horror in there. So if I put on the glasses, the Oculus goggles, and I'm stepping into Molly's virtual reality room, universe, whatever you may call it, what am I going to see? What is it going to look like?
Oh wow. Uh, that is a very good question that I never would have even thought about. And it's, I mean, I like, I feel like it also, there's so many different ways I could answer this. But what's funny is that the first thing that came to my head was actually one of my childhood nightmares that I still vividly remember. I feel like that's probably where it would go, which was like a house. I don't think it was technically on an island, but there's flooding. So like it's a house with a yard and a driveway and just water all around it. With like a vampire that's turning all of the hired help into other vampires and an army of vampires that are going to come kill you. And there are also great white sharks in the water, so there's really no way to
Oh
escape.
shit.
That's immediately what came to mind. That's like one of the nightmares I remember most vividly from my childhood.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like a nightmare. That sounds
Yeah.
like yeah, that's well, thank you for that. Thank you for that answer.
There'd be a really great house, like really nice views during the day, I'm sure.
Yes.
But you just have to worry about, I mean, it's kind of like if you were going to what is it, Santa Clara in Lost Boys, like it'd be great except for all the damn vampires and sharks in this case. But
Oh yes, I definitely I'm glad you're into the horror genre, because if you were a realtor, you know, trying to sell that house, you know, mentioning the vampires and the sharks and stuff like that, you know, it would be might be a little bit of a problem, might be a little bit of a problem. Um, Now my last question for you would be, if you could spend a day in the life of your favorite like horror villain or, you know, creature, it could be a person, entity, anything. Who or what would it be for 24 hours?
ooh, okay. I'm not gonna say Freddy Krueger again because that's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know. I feel like I'd want to be something that can transform into something else, but not like not Ginger Snaps transform where once it happens it's permanent. I don't want to be forever. So maybe actually, you know what? I think I would want to be what do they call him? Uh they didn't call him Gilman, but I want to be the version of Gilman from The Shape of Water. I don't know. Like
Gotcha.
I like the water. I like being by myself and away from people, and I feel like he would be a cool creature to like be while doing that. even though that would be a permanent change if I did that, but whatever. But also he's just like the design of that creature was so beautifully done. And like the
Yes.
little light, like the bioluminescence or whatever that he had on him and stuff. I just think that that's one of those things that it's like aesthetically beautiful, but also if you think about it in terms of like evolution and it existing in the wild and stuff, that's like top tier predator. Nothing is going to mess with that except for stupid men that are then going to get killed. So I feel like that, like it's kind of like the next level of the evolution of people, or next level of the food chain or whatever. So I think that would be a cool creature to be.
Yes, yes. I love the choice. I love the choice, especially because like no one has picked that one. So I'm loving the choice. As soon as you mentioned it, I'm like, oh, this is like because I just remember the music and I haven't seen that movie in a while, but it was very like it was a very moody
Mhm.
type of music type of movie, definitely had an awesome soundtrack, definitely had an awesome soundtrack, you know. So great choice, great choice. Love that, love that. Mika says Shape of Water, awesome choice. And then Anthony Jerome, let's see, and he's pretty cute too.
Yeah.
Let's see.
He, the the the
The
creature.
gill. Yeah, the
Yeah.
creature.
He
Yeah.
he had a nice butt for sure. I would like to have that butt. So it'd be great. I'll turn into that. It's fine.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you again, Molly. Thank you again for stopping by and making this interview, awesome. If you guys want to check Molly out and the things that she's got going on, I've got the links in the description below already. So definitely make sure you check that out. And do you have anything to share with the people, before we roll out of here, Molly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you again for having me on. This was awesome. I always love talking horror. And thank you to everyone who is watching and commenting. I mean, I always have stuff going on. I have a few things that I can't talk about yet, but once I'm able to, I obviously will post all that stuff all over social media. And just keep an eye out for my monthly uterus horror column. I've been on a bit of a hiatus from writing reviews, but I'm at the point where I'm ready to kind of get back into that as well. So, but I always post everything on social media as it goes up. So if you're following me on any of those, then you will see it.
All right, all right. You heard it here, folks. You heard it here, folks. Follow her for the updates. Thank you guys in the comments for hanging out. Thank you, Paul, Mika, and Kira. Thank y'all for stopping by. Jaleesa, thank you for stopping by. Wilkie, everybody who showed some love tonight. If I missed you, my apologies. Just skimming through the chat. But yes, that's been another episode of Evil Live, and as always, it's gonna be peace, love, and horror. And we out of here, folks. In the description, check her out in the description. Yes.